All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Datador Front Porch podcast. It is a new weekly podcast that Tyler and I will be recording to talk about what is happening in the prop tech space and especially what's happening with Opendoor, which is the main company you're covering right now. We'll just see how it goes. It's our first episode. And we have a few exciting topics. It was a quite eventful week or 2 weeks. But as episodes go on, you can also send us you can also send us questions to podcast@datador.io, and we will try to answer them as well. But maybe let's get started with the first topic, which is quite a big one. Eric Wu steps down as CEO, becomes president of Marketplace, and Carrie Wheeler steps in as CEO from CFO.
Yeah, I think it's been kind of a blockbuster 2-week period for Opendoor with these news, right? Because Opendoor is not a young company. Eric has been, the co-founder and CEO since inception in 2014. And so the news of him stepping down from CEO to now president of Marketplace is notable for two reasons. One, it means he's no longer CEO, right? And Carrie Wheeler, CFO, and formerly board member, is stepping into the CEO role. But two, that Eric is taking a job that previously hasn't existed for the company, right? He's now president of Marketplace, which is a brand new product for the company, and I think it speaks one to how the company sees the difficult times ahead and the fact that they kind of want a more wartime leader at the helm. But I think it also speaks to the fact that Eric is fundamentally a 0 to 1 product person, right? He's a visionary. He's someone who can really obsess over a consumer problem and bring a rare solution to light. And that's what he's really trying to do with Marketplace. And I think that's the most sustainable expression of the iBuyer model that they're trying to run towards. And so there's a lot to unpack with this whole leadership change, but a lot of strategy and a lot of nuance.
So one thing we've also seen in accompanying this change is some other leadership changes. So we saw Andrew stepping away from the company as he was the president. I'm not sure if he had an additional title, president operations or something like that. CEO. He was CEO at some point. Okay. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's tough always to lose sort of a core critical member of the company. I think he's had some really impactful roles at prior companies, scaling during growth. So companies like Netflix. I think he's definitely known as more of a marketing mind. Like that's really his core competency, and so I think losing him was a surprise. I think we've also heard that there's ruminations around the company around him leaving as well. That there might be some rationale for that we haven't been able to confirm or deny. But it's interesting. I mean, he's leaving basically as president of the company, and Eric is moving into that role with a specific distinction on Marketplace.
Yeah, you mentioned it's really hard for us from the outside to actually understand why these changes happened, and usually it's not a positive sign if the CEO has to step down or be replaced by a CFO. In this case, if we try to speculate a little bit, do you think it had something to do with what happened in the last 3 to 6 months, and that maybe Eric himself or the boards saw that for the next 6 to 12 months, which will be quite hard for the company, the needs something to change?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it definitely puts a finer point on it. It's like, I think for my part, I have the opportunity of having so many conversations with ex Opendoor employees or people who know the company well, but are no longer there, who are able to speculate and sort of speak to the company culture and what might be going on behind closed doors, because it is at its heart such a secretive company. And I think what I've learned is that Eric really didn't like the role of CEO at this time, speaking to investors and running this, multiple thousands of employees company. He really, like I said, he's a product guy, and he wants to obsess over that product and his vision for what Opendoor can become. And I imagine that there's a lot of administrative and probably not super enjoyable elements of the day-to-day CEO life. And so you take that in the context of the fact that Opendoor didn't do well in this past year, right? Like, however you want to cut it, and regardless of whether or not you say that home prices fell faster than they really ever have in modern times, Opendoor still bought far too many homes at precisely the wrong time. And I think for a publicly traded company worth several $1 billion, that needs to be addressed. That needs to be investigated and looked into. And so I imagine that there were many conversations behind closed doors about who was to blame or who drove some of those inopportune purchases. And that probably led to certain people exiting and certain people shuffling their role. And at the end of the day, it is a terrible time to be buying and selling homes at scale. I mean, it's a down market. And I think, to navigate that crisis probably requires someone who's very analytical, someone who's very, has a deep understanding of capital markets, debt structures, financing. And so in that regard, this switch makes a lot of sense. And I would say I would be much more disappointed with the change as a shareholder and as someone who's bullish on the prop tech space if Eric was leaving the company, but he's not. He's focusing on what I believe is the most important initiative for the company, which is Opendoor exclusives and their third party marketplace.
Do you think you mentioned a few things where kind of Eric was lacking, or at least from the outside, it seems like he was lacking. But the last big interview he gave was a few weeks ago. Ben Thompson with Strategy. Before that, the last big interview we saw was really in 2019. There were a few appearances as part of the IPO, but we didn't really hear a lot from him outside of the shareholder letters. Do you think Carrie has a different approach to dealing with investors and PR and information flow?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I can tell you that the fund managers that I've spoken to about Carrie all seem to really respect her opinion and feel like she's sharp and really knows her stuff. And so I think the opinion that I'm expressing is actually quite aligned with everyone that I've spoken to in the the fund space and the investor space. But it sort of remains to be seen how verbal and how much sharing Carrie is going to be doing with the investor community, because I think it's so necessary for companies misunderstood as Opendoor. There needs to be space for discourse. There needs to be space for a narrative to be built for a company like this. And that's, the space that Eric left for that to be done has largely been inhabited by us, right? Like that's how we were able to really create Data Doors, because the company was so misunderstood. And there really wasn't anyone else who took the time to understand what they were trying to build. And so that was on the one hand good for us, but I think long term, what's most necessary for Opendoor, and this is what we've always been aiming towards, is to make the thesis for iBuying and prop tech in general more understood. Because without it being understood, there's really no thesis. And without a thesis, you can't invest in the company. And these are all publicly traded companies that need investors. And so I think, for Carrie, one of the things I would love to see is an attempt, to be better in that regard, to share more with investors, to make more appearances for interviews, because at the end of the day, that's probably one of the things besides execution that Opendoor requires most.
Yeah, and I guess that space was filled with a lot of headlines that were not always accurate, but sometimes they were, but a lot of negative headlines. I think when we look at any article, major news site about Opendoor, it was usually to run after that clickbait of big losses, even if those were exaggerated from what the data actually showed. But yeah, we're at a very bad time right now. It's probably also not the best time to step down as a CEO after the biggest loss in a quarter. But the opportunity here is a clean slate for Carrie to come in and do it better. We know, or it's likely that the next quarters won't see big write-downs, big losses for the headlines anymore. It will be probably a slow and gradual recovery, and hopefully with Carrie's help, coming back to where we were in Q1, Q2 this year again.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd say is this division is kind of interesting. Like, this division of labor is kind of interesting, right? Because Carrie inherits this role as CEO, and I think everyone sort of feels like, okay, ball's in her court. She needs to really execute for this company well. But also at the end of the day, like, Opendoor has a method. It has pricing, it has operations, it has sales, it has products, etc. Like Carrie understands all of that, and all of that has sort of been solved for, especially since Eric wasn't really managing all of that day to day anyways, right? Like Andrew Lowicky was, as president. And so I would say Carrie's job fundamentally right now is to be ruthless about capital and to be efficient. And that's like a money problem that she's solving. But what they've effectively done by moving Eric from CEO to president of marketplace, they're kind of unleashing him. You know what I mean? They're kind of unleashing him, and in this qualified way where they say, you have been replaced at CEO at the worst time for your baby, for your company that you've been building and losing sleep over for 8 years. And you've been moved to a different role, right? Now you're not even the CEO of your own company anymore, but you are going to be president of the most important product, and quite possibly will save the life of that company. And I think eliminating some of those blockades for him, eliminating some of that inertia that surrounded probably his day-to-day life as a CEO, I have to imagine for someone like Eric, who has discussed being sort of misvalued himself for a long time as someone who feels like he's been the underdog in a lot of different circumstances, that's fuel for people like that. That's endless alternative fuel for people like that. And so if Eric can tap into that, if Eric can kind of come to work every day reinvigorated about building this product and saving his company, I think he really has the hardest job in the company now. He has to create a product that doesn't exist, and he has to make it 30% of Opendoor's business, which is already at significant scale. I mean, he's the one who really has the job to lose in the situation. And he really has the most interesting part of Opendoor's future business.
Yeah, and we can talk about marketplace a little bit more in a second, but I think you're framing it in the right way. From the blog post, which was the email that Eric sent as part of this quite shocking announcement to the company, it really sounds like a positive message. Like, this is a new chapter that is better for everyone. And what I really liked about this is the personal note about Carrie and how she came to the business and how she proved herself to be really valuable to the business, right? It's not that they're like promoting like the CFO, just the CFO to the CEO. It's like this person that was involved in the company, was an advisor to the company, was a board member, then became CFO because they really needed a CFO for the IPO, and now stepping up to the CEO. There's a much richer history that might be visible just from the headline.
Right. And I think, the other thing I'd say is because of the work we've done in the prop tech space, we've been able to be exposed to different leaders and builders. And like, for example, the CEO of Divvy, Adena Hefetz, when I spoke to her about her company, she specifically highlighted her relationship with Carrie Wheeler and how Carrie Wheeler was a huge mentor for her and kind of cultivated her progression as she was coming up through the same system. And she really couldn't say enough nice things about Carrie. And I think, like I said, all the investors I've spoken to as well feel the same way. Like, I feel like Opendoor is in good hands. And Carrie definitely has a longer history with this company than I think it looks like on the surface. She's been with Opendoor for multiple years now. I think three and a half. So she knows it very well.
Yeah, it feels like the right person on the helm to get us on a green path again. But the person who has to get us on the rocket to the moon is really Eric, right? And maybe we can talk a little bit about the marketplace.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, Eric's job was not to be a steward of a several thousand person company, or certainly not at this stage, right? And I think for the type of individual that Eric is, his job is finding S curves. His job is finding the next S curve for the company so that they can go from current scale to 10x the current scale. And I think he's done it. I think he's found what that product could be. Whether or not it can be executed remains to be seen. And that's this marketplace idea. But if you think about Opendoor's core business, it's first party, right? Opendoor buys a home from whoever. It owns the home, it refurbishes it, it relists it, it shows it, and it resells it, right? And that's a very interesting business. It's novel, especially if you do it at scale, but it's also a very difficult business because you're exposed to home price depreciation. You're exposed to property taxes, natural disasters, debt financing, right? It's a very expensive business to run. And we've seen potential downfall for that business in the summer of this year when home prices dropped double digits over a period of several months, which happens perhaps once every 50 years in the United States. And so normally I would say not too much of an issue, but it feels especially pertinent right now. And so the question is, especially as we continue wandering down this very dark residential real estate market, is what is the next expression of Opendoor's business? And so Eric has come up with this marketplace model. And in the marketplace model, they remain the middleman, but in this situation, they don't have to own the home. And so for Opendoor's marketplace vision, Opendoor exclusives, what they do is a consumer comes on Opendoor's platform and they list a home that they own. And Opendoor assembles offers from other people. So they can be individual home shoppers. They can be real estate investment trusts, institutional investors. And all of those different buyers will submit offers to that individual. And if the individual selects one of those offers, then Opendoor extracts a 5% fee, which is 100 basis points less than a realtor might charge on average. But then also Opendoor returns 200 basis points of that fee to the consumer. And so that's really the value proposition, is that the consumer, as opposed to paying 5 to 6%, they're really only paying 3% for Opendoor to match them with a shopper. And on the consumer side, wow, what a value proposition. You don't have to show your home. You don't have to really talk to anyone. You just input your address, take some photos, share some pictures, and you get a bunch of offers within a 1 to 2 week period that you can say yes to or you can say no to, and there's no pressure, right? But just being able to have those offers in your back pocket, especially in this buyer's market that we're entering into, I think is really valuable for consumers.
And I guess we can go a little bit into the details here on both the seller and the buyer side, but maybe starting with the seller side. What that concretely means is, as a seller today, I'm going to Opendoor to get a cash offer from Opendoor. A number, I think Eric called it like an envelope with cash that I can take now and just give away my home. 100% certainty, speed. It's going to close in 2 weeks to 6 weeks, I think is the maximum. And I know that's safe. Now, what Opendoor has been testing now for a little bit over 1.5 months is this third-party business in Texas where I go to Opendoor and I get this cash offer, this guaranteed offer. That's still there. But on top of that, Opendoor asked me, hey, should we collect some more offers for you from multiple buyers? And there's 2 avenues here. One is real buyers who are looking for a home through Opendoor exclusives. So if you opt into that, they will list that home on Opendoor exclusives, and buyers can submit offers for the 2-week period. And as well, they're going to show this home to their institutional investors. So Opendoor, this is is not that well known, and we should probably do a separate podcast on how Opendoor interacts with REITs and institutional investors. But like the TLDR is, Opendoor has a platform where institutional investors can look for homes that they want to acquire. And as part of this new seller experience, the buyer can explicitly opt in to show their home to institutional investors. Mm-hmm. After 2 weeks, the seller today in Texas would get an email and say, hey, all your offers are ready. And they would see there's the cash offer, guaranteed cash offer from Opendoor, the first party offer. There's maybe a higher offer from a real buyer, from a real family that wants to buy the home through Opendoor exclusives. And maybe there's a little bit of a even higher offer from an institutional buyer if there was one that was interested in their home. And now, as a seller, I can make the decision on my own based on the risks that I see, based on my timeline of moving, who I sell this home to, without me having to list the home on MLS, deal with an agent, deal with all the other parties involved. It's a much simpler process, right? That's from the seller side. Now, on the buyer side, the biggest question, that's what I put over to you, Tyler. The biggest question we get is, why Opendoor? There's Zillow there, there's Redfin there, they have millions and millions of visitors every month. Opendoor doesn't have millions of buyers visiting their platform every month. Why is Opendoor in the position to take advantage of this opportunity? Why hasn't Zillow done it?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think this is the question that comes up most frequently is, why are Zillow and Redfin not also doing this if it's such a great business? And I think the biggest part of this is, how do you jumpstart a marketplace, right? Like, how do you get a marketplace going from zero? And it's almost like striking a match, or like igniting a car, or like the ignition for a car, right? Or a rocket or whatever. Like you need something to get the boosters going. And I think the reason that the Zillows and the Redfins of the world can't do this is because they don't already have a first party business. And that's incredibly important for this marketplace, right? Is you need to have this first party business to seed the marketplace. You need to have that supply already for the marketplace on the one hand, but you also need to have the ability to escalate on those offers for your consumers. If your consumers come to your marketplace and you can't get any offers for the homes, then the marketplace really ceases to have any value. But if every single home that's listed on your marketplace by a homeowner has an Opendoor backed offer attached to it, suddenly you have a product, right? Because that means that no consumer is walking away empty-handed. At the end of the day, every consumer that enters in is at the very least getting one data point about the value of their home that's backed by money, which is more than can be said by any other consumer who is listing their home on the MLS in the United States or the world, as far as I'm concerned. And so I think that's really the first step of the value proposition for the Opendoor marketplace, is that these consumers are coming in and they automatically have at least one offer on their home. And Opendoor guarantees that this is the price that we will pay you for your home. But then in addition to that, these consumers are also getting all these offers from Opendoor's extensive collection of real estate investment trusts, institutional investors, which is, again, a advantage of Opendoor, who has formed these relationships with these companies because it provides the software that these companies use to buy and sell homes for years now, which is something that Zillow and the Redfins haven't done. And we can see evidence of the fact that they have a moat here because the Zillows and the Redfins have made exclusive deals with Opendoor for Opendoor to continue doing what they're doing and Redfin and Zillow to continue doing what they're doing, right? And so I think that's really probably the best evidence of why they can't do this, is because Opendoor has dominated this first party business and they've shown that they can do it at scale more profitably than their peers, recent struggles notwithstanding. And so being able to see this marketplace with this first party business is step one. And then also having these relationships and the muscle of working with these institutional investors is step two. Really the cherry on top is this relationship with Zillow that is going to be started in Q1 that's going to allow more homes into Opendoor's funnel through Zillow. And that's just going to feed and allow this marketplace to grow even faster, I think.
I guess the question on top of that is like, how is Opendoor? They have the supply. They have hundreds of thousands of potential sellers going to the platform, checking the offer of their home, and maybe even awaiting more offers and are ready to list with this no commitment exclusives marketplace. But like, where are the buyers coming from, right? Zillow has millions, hundreds of millions of visitors every month. Opendoor doesn't. And I think Eric went into that a little bit in his strategy interview with Ben Thompson, and somebody actually shared a screenshot of that in our Discord, which I was quite excited about because I didn't know this was a reality. So Opendoor has like 3 big funnels to get buyers onto this page where they list homes for 14 days, and then those homes disappear and go into an MLS, or they disappear forever in those, maybe in the third-party cases, because not every seller that tries to list their home on exclusives will then actually want to sell it on MLS. But the first big one is Opendoor can cross-sell their inventory with their existing MLS listings. And how Eric described that is to visit and tour an Opendoor home, you need to download the Opendoor app. You have to, or at least like submit your phone number and I think your ID, your credit card to prove that you're a real human to enter a home with those electric locks that Opendoor uses on their homes that are listed on MLS. And with that, they know that buyers are looking for a home, what homes they're visiting, what neighborhoods they're visiting, and they can now recommend additional homes that are exclusively listed by Opendoor or on the marketplace to those buyers. And one screenshot we saw from somebody trying it out, and I think it was in Austin, is that Opendoor sent them, they were visiting a regular home listed on MLS, and they got an SMS, a text message from Opendoor, like recommending them 3 other homes that are exclusively listed in their neighborhood that they should check out. And which the nice detail that I really love, they even included like a link to a Google Maps route, the best way to visit all those homes. But that just shows like one way that probably nobody expects, where Opendoor already has thousands of really hot leads that are looking to buy a home that they can show those homes to.
Yeah, and I think to sort of add on to that too, it's like we are now entering an era of a buyer's market, right? Which makes it really hard to sell your home. And so I think relative to the post-COVID era, it's or the immediate post-COVID era, it's geometrically more challenging to sell your home today than it was then. And you're certainly not going to get the valuation now that you might have then. And so tools are needed for home sellers to sell their homes. And I think this really is a timely solution to that problem. And it just shows kind of the creativity of the different ways that this product can gain traction and get up to that fabled 30% share of Opendoor's total market transaction by this time next year. They have to be creative, right? It's like guerrilla warfare. They have to go in and be gritty and figure out solutions to new problems. It's like this is the actual startup within a startup, and so being able to track this and we are tracking this right on Datador, the actual expansion of Opendoor's third-party and first-party marketplace is something that I check multiple times a day, because even though it's early days and the volumes are low right now, this is the most important long-term initiative for Opendoor survival.
Yeah, maybe as a last question here for you, because we're already at 30 minutes or something. What should we expect from Opendoor exclusives in the next few months? I mean, we've seen them launching in Austin a year ago. That has been going for quite a while. Then earlier this year, we saw them launch in Dallas and Houston. And now we have a long stretch of not much going on other than the first party business kind of being trialed in all those free markets with very low volume. If we want to get to 30% of market share, what do we need to see in the next few months?
Yeah, I think Opendoor exclusives needs to be launched in Opendoor's largest markets over the next few months. So I would expect, if I was designing the company blueprint based on the fact that they've already launched in Dallas, Austin, and Houston, which are top 10 markets for Opendoor. I think Dallas is between 1 and 3 every quarter in terms of volume. I need to see them do the same thing in Phoenix and Atlanta, and then just begin down the list from there. This is a product that should be scalable across all of their major markets. And it's needed to be for them to achieve that number. And so what I'm looking at is rapid expansion across these markets. I'm looking at an increased number of active listings, a bigger pending pipeline. I would expect a similar situation to what we saw in their Texas markets, which is they list a lot of homes up front, get a lot of learnings, and then slowly whittle down the number of exclusives that they're listing and ramp up conversion rate. I think the same thing is needed, because exclusives is a product that demands consumer education. It's something that needs to be explained. It's not like this is another streaming service and you plug and play. This is a brand new product that other people aren't really doing. And so Opendoor is going to have to educate consumers. They're going to need marketing. They're going to need local playbooks. But once they do, the economics of an exclusive sale are dramatically better than their first party business.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I mean, what's interesting is like this 30% number that was announced. You kind of think it's coming from like somewhere. I mean, they said like 20% of those 30% are kind of institutional sales that they are already doing by owning the home first, and now they're going to transition that into never owning the home in most cases. But what's interesting is like when we saw them scale Austin at the beginning of the year, when the market was still kind of hot, they started listing literally 100% of their listings on exclusives first for 14 days. And we saw them go up to like 30% of all their sales going through exclusives in the market, which is quite encouraging. So I think it's attainable. We can get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to take some time, but I'm cautiously optimistic on their chances of making this happen.
All right. I think that was enough for our first episode. Please, if you like this, leave us a comment, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and send us questions to podcast@datador.io. And you should see us again next week.
Yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in.